blood. That was the first thing Nathaniel smelled when the private elevator doors chimed open on the penthouse floor. Not the usual crisp scent of expensive cologne or fresh espresso, just copper fare and the undeniable panicked pheromones of an Omega in distress. His Omega. Nathaniel Reed was a predator in a bespoke Brioni suit. As the CEO of Reed Capital, a titan firm eating up real estate and tech startups across Wall Street, he had a reputation that preceded him. He was a prime alpha, possessing a commanding presence that could suffocate a boardroom just by stepping through the mahogany doors. His scent, a sharp, intoxicating blend of cedarwood winter frost and petrichor, was meticulously controlled, save for when he was closing a multi-billion-dollar deal. Yet for all his primal dominance and calculated ruthlessness, Nathaniel's entire empire was held together by one person, his executive assistant, Oliver Hayes. Oliver was a ghost in the corporate machine, a master of efficiency who anticipated Nathaniel's needs before the alpha even realized them himself. He managed the Bloomberg terminals, organized hostile takeovers, and filtered out the sycophants. Officially, Oliver's medical records at Human Resources stated he was a beta. In the hyper-competitive, testosterone-drenched financial sector, being a beta was an asset. It meant you were immune to the aggressive posturing of alphas and the debilitating biological rhythms of omegas. But Oliver was living a lie. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., in his tiny Astoria apartment, Oliver swallowed a brutal cocktail of black market suppressants. He sourced them from a discreet underground pharmacist known only as Dr. Harrison, paying entirely in untraceable cryptocurrency. These weren't your standard over-the-counter hormone blockers. They were military-grade inhibitors that suppressed his natural heat cycle and masked his scent, entirely replacing his natural sweet aroma of vanilla and crushed blackberries with the sterile, unremarkable smell of unscented soap and starched cotton. The pills gave him migraines that felt like ice picks behind his eyes, and the scent blocker patches burned his skin, leaving raw red welts on his collarbone. But it was the price of survival. In Nathaniel's world, an Omega wouldn't be allowed within 50 feet of the executive floor. They were viewed as liabilities, fragile creatures, meant for domesticity, not the brutal trenches of venture capitalism. For 3 years, the facade held perfectly. Nathaniel respected Oliver, relied on him, and unknowingly grew intensely possessive of him. The alpha would unconsciously position himself between Oliver and aggressive clients. He would track Oliver's pulse when the office ran late into the night. Nathaniel rationalized it as protecting a valuable corporate asset. He didn't know his inner alpha was already claiming the disguised Omega. The delicate glass house Oliver had built began to fracture during the hostile acquisition of Pierce Global. Dominic Pierce was a rival alpha, the heir to a logistics empire that Reed Capital was attempting to absorb. Dominic was everything Nathaniel was not: crude, undisciplined, and reeking of burnt rubber and stale cigars. He used his alpha pheromones like a bludgeon, trying to intimidate anyone in his path. The final negotiation took place on a rainy Tuesday in the glass-walled conference room overlooking Manhattan. Oliver stood quietly in the corner, a tablet pressed to his chest, taking meticulous notes. His head was throbbing. He had missed a dose of his suppressants that morning, due to a frantic 3 a.m. call from the Tokyo branch. He had slapped on an extra blocker patch, praying it would be enough. It wasn't. As negotiations grew heated, Dominic slammed his fists onto the marble table, releasing a suffocating wave of aggressive dominance. The sheer force of the Alpha command was meant for Nathaniel, but it hit Oliver like a physical blow. Oliver's breath hitched. His hands trembled, and he dropped his stylus. The sharp clatter echoed in the tense room. Dominic's head snapped toward Oliver. The rival Alpha's eyes narrowed, his nostrils flaring as he took a deep, invasive breath. The heavy stress and the overwhelming Alpha presence in the room were eating through Oliver's chemical barriers. A microscopic sliver of his true scent, sweet distressed vanilla, slipped through the cracks. Well, well. Dominic purred his hostility, momentarily replaced by a predatory curiosity. He abandoned the negotiation table and took a slow step toward the corner where Oliver stood. "Reed, I didn't realize you kept such delicate company on the executive floor. What exactly is your assistant's dynamic?" Nathaniel instantly stood his chair, scraping violently against the floorboards. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Oliver's dynamic is none of your concern, Pierce. Step back." Nathaniel's voice was dangerously low, vibrating with a territorial rumble that vibrated in Oliver's chest. "Just asking a question." Dominic smirked, taking another step closer to Oliver, deliberately invading his personal space. "He smells interesting, almost sweet beneath all that chemical astringent." Oliver forced his face into a mask of professional indifference, though his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "I am a beta Mr. Pierce, and we are currently discussing Section 4 of the asset liquidations." Dominic chuckled a wet, ugly sound. He leaned in his lips inches from Oliver's ear. "Sure you are, sweetheart." Before Dominic could inhale again, Nathaniel was there. The Prime Alpha moved with terrifying speed, inserting his large frame directly between Dominic and Oliver. Nathaniel released a concentrated burst of his own pheromones, sharp, biting winter frost, forcing Dominic to take a stumbling step back, choking on the dominance. "The meeting is over." Nathaniel snarled his eyes, flashing a vivid, unnatural amber. "My legal team will send you the revised terms. If you don't sign them by Friday, I will dismantle your father's company, piece by piece, and sell it for scrap. Get out of my office." Dominic recovered his composure, straightening his tie with a sneer. "You're making a mistake over a glorified secretary, Reed. Get out." Once the doors closed, leaving them alone in the boardroom, Nathaniel turned to Oliver. The Alpha's chest was heaving, his protective instincts still dialed up to an agonizing degree. "Are you all right, Oliver?" Nathaniel's voice softened, the amber fading from his eyes. "I'm fine, sir," Oliver lied smoothly, gripping his tablet so tightly his knuckles turned white. His skin felt like it was on fire, the suppressed Omega biology screaming at him to submit to the protective Alpha in front of him. "Just a headache." Nathaniel looked at him for a long, piercing moment. "Go home. Take the rest of the afternoon off. I have to finalize the Morgan Stanley reports." "I said go home, Oliver. That's an order." But Oliver didn't go home. He couldn't. If he left the reports unfinished, the merger would stall, and Nathaniel would be furious tomorrow. Oliver retreated to his desk, swallowed 3 ibuprofen, and prayed the worst was over. He was terribly, tragically wrong. By 8 p.m., the sprawling Reed Capital offices were a ghost town. The cleaning crew had already swept through the lower floors, and the only light on the 82nd floor came from the glowing monitors on Oliver's desk and the sprawling city lights of New York filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Nathaniel had left at 7 p.m. for a high-stakes dinner at Le Coucou with the board of directors. Oliver had assured him he was right behind him, promising to lock up. The silence of the office was usually comforting to Oliver, a rare moment of peace, where he didn't have to monitor his every breath and movement. He unbuttoned his collar, wincing as he peeled off one of the irritated scent patches to let his skin breathe. He just needed 30 more minutes to encrypt the files. He didn't hear the elevator chime. He didn't hear the heavy footsteps sinking into the plush carpets. The first warning Oliver had was the suffocating stench of stale cigars and sour aggression. Oliver spun around in his ergonomic chair, his heart leaping into his throat. Dominic Pierce stood in the doorway of the executive suite, holding a deactivated security keycard. He had bribed one of the night guards, a classic dirty tactic from a man who couldn't win fair and square. "Working late, little beta," Dominic sneered casually, tossing the keycard onto a nearby desk. He locked the heavy glass door behind him. "Mr. Pierce," Oliver said, standing up quickly, his hand instinctively hovering over the panic button mounted beneath his desk. "You are trespassing. Mr. Reed is not here." "I know he's not," Dominic said, walking slowly toward Oliver. His eyes were entirely black, his alpha completely pushed to the surface. "I watched his town car pull away an hour ago. He left his little pet all alone." Oliver pressed the silent panic button. Nothing happened. Dominic laughed, pulling a small silver jammer from his pocket. "I'm not stupid, sweetheart. Now let's talk about those merger terms. Or better yet, let's talk about what you really are." Dominic lunged. Oliver was fast dodging to the right, but Dominic was a heavy, biologically enhanced alpha. Dominic's hand clamped down on Oliver's shoulder, tearing the fabric of his tailored shirt and exposing the angry red welt where the scent patch had been removed. Instantly, the suppression broke. The sheer terror spiking in Oliver's bloodstream overrode the failing chemicals. A heavy, intoxicating wave of pure omega pheromones, sweet vanilla dark berries, and desperate fear flooded the office air. Dominic groaned, his eyes dilating wildly. "I knew it!" he breathed, pinning Oliver against the heavy glass of the conference table. "A filthy little omega hiding in the big leagues. If the board finds out Reed has an unbonded omega running his books, his stock will plummet." "Get off me," Oliver snarled, driving his knee upward. It connected with Dominic's thigh, making the alpha stumble, but it only enraged him further. Dominic struck out a backhanded slap that sent Oliver crashing over the edge of the glass coffee table. The heavy tempered glass shattered under the impact. Oliver cried out as shards bit into his forearms and ribs. He hit the floor hard, the breath knocked from his lungs, his vision swimming with dark spots. "You're going to fix those merger documents?" Dominic hissed, stalking toward the bleeding omega, unbuckling his belt. "And then I'm going to show you exactly where an omega belongs." 3 miles away, sitting in the private dining room of Le Coucou, Nathaniel Reed froze mid-sentence. He was holding a crystal glass of scotch, discussing quarterly projections with the senior partners from Morgan Stanley, when a sudden violent tearing sensation ripped through his chest. It felt as though a jagged hook had been planted in his ribs and yanked violently toward downtown Manhattan. His inner alpha roared a deafening, blinding sound that drowned out the classical music and the murmurs of the restaurant. "Mine! Danger! Mate! Hurt!" Nathaniel gasped, the crystal glass shattering in his grip. Amber liquid and blood dripped onto the white tablecloth. "Nathaniel! Good God, man, are you all right?" one of the partners asked, leaping up. Nathaniel didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes had bled completely into a glowing feral amber. The civilized CEO was gone. Only the primal beast remained. He shoved past the waiters, throwing a stack of $100 bills onto the Maître stand, and sprinted into the rain-slicked streets. He didn't wait for his driver. He hijacked a waiting cab, roaring at the driver to get to the Reed Capitol building, or he'd break his neck. The ride took 8 minutes. It felt like an eternity. The phantom pain in his chest was agonizing, accompanied by a phantom scent of vanilla, drowning in copper. When the private elevator doors chimed open on the penthouse floor, the metallic scent of blood hit Nathaniel like a freight train. He moved silently, a predator stalking through his own territory. The door to the executive suite was locked. Nathaniel didn't bother with his key. He delivered a brutal, calculating kick to the locking mechanism, shattering the door frame and sending the heavy glass door crashing inward. Inside the scene froze his blood into ice. The office was destroyed. Papers were scattered like snow. The glass table was in ruins. And there, backed into the corner, bleeding from cuts on his arms and a nasty gash on his temple, was Oliver. The Omega was holding a heavy bronze paperweight, shaking violently, his eyes wide with raw terror. Standing over him, panting and bleeding from a scratch on his cheek, was Dominic Pierce. The air was thick, choking with Dominic's foul, aggressive scent, and underneath it, the heart-wrenching, terrified aroma of an unbound Omega. Oliver's true scent. Nathaniel didn't process the betrayal of the secret. He didn't process the broken furniture. He only saw the blood dripping from Oliver's pale face. Dominic turned around, his smug expression instantly vanishing as he met Nathaniel's eyes. The primal, murderous aura radiating from Nathaniel was so heavy it made the air physically hard to breathe. Nathaniel stepped into the room, his voice dropping an octave into a demonic, unnatural resonance that vibrated the remaining glass in the windows. "Who did this to you?" Silence descended upon the ruined executive office, a heavy, suffocating weight that felt like the pressure at the bottom of the ocean. Nathaniel Reed didn't blink. His eyes, glowing with that terrifying feral amber, remained locked on Dominic Pierce. The air in the room crackled with an unseen, violent electricity. Oliver Hayes, bleeding and trembling against the shattered remnants of the glass coffee table, watched as his meticulously ordered life finally disintegrated into absolute chaos. "Nathaniel!" Dominic choked out, taking a stumbling step backward. The smug arrogance that had colored his features moments ago was entirely gone, replaced by the primal, instinctive terror of a lesser predator realizing it had wandered into a monster's den. "This isn't what it looks like. He attacked me. The little freak is an Omega. He lied to your HR department. He falsified documents." "I asked you a question, Dominic," Nathaniel interrupted. His voice was not a shout. It was worse. It was a low, resonant vibration that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, carrying the absolute authority of a prime alpha. "Who did this to him?" Dominic swallowed hard, his back hitting the mahogany bookshelves. He threw himself into the table, trying to get away. He's unstable Reed. You know how these Omegas get when their hormones act up. I was just trying to secure the merger for Pierce Global. My father and Jamie Dimon are expecting this deal to close. You can't jeopardize $1 billion acquisition over a lying secretary. Nathaniel moved. He did not walk. He simply crossed the distance between the doorway and Dominic in a blur of motion that defied his large frame. Before Dominic could raise his hands to defend himself, Nathaniel's fingers clamped around his throat. The prime alpha lifted Dominic effortlessly off the floor, slamming him against the expensive wooden paneling with enough force to crack the shelves. Books and crystal awards rained down around them, but Nathaniel didn't flinch. "You invoked my company, my deals, and Wall Street to justify putting your hands on him," Nathaniel whispered, his face inches from Dominic's turning purple face. Nathaniel's winter frost pheromones sharpened into an ice storm, freezing the air in Dominic's lungs. "Let me explain exactly what is going to happen to you, Pierce. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Reed Capital will dump every single share we hold in Pierce Logistics. I will personally call the board at Goldman Sachs and the SEC to trigger an audit of your offshore accounts. By noon, your father's legacy will be a cautionary tale taught in business schools. By Friday, you will be bankrupt. But that is merely business." Nathaniel's grip tightened, his amber eyes completely eclipsing his pupils. "This right here, this is personal." With a sickening crunch, Nathaniel delivered a brutal, precise strike to Dominic's shoulder, dislocating it entirely. Dominic screamed a high-pitched sound of agony that was abruptly cut off as Nathaniel tossed him onto the carpet like a broken doll. "Crawl to the elevator," Nathaniel commanded, his voice echoing with merciless finality. "If I ever see your face in this city again, if I ever catch your scent within 100 miles of this building, I will not stop at ruining your company. I will erase you. Go." Dominic, clutching his useless arm, didn't hesitate. Sobbing and gasping for air, the ruined Alpha scrambled out of the shattered doorway, leaving a trail of pathetic, sour scent in his wake. Once the heavy footsteps disappeared down the hall, the oppressive, violent energy in the room shifted. Nathaniel stood perfectly still for a long moment, his broad shoulders heaving as he fought to regain control of the feral beast clawing at the inside of his chest. The threat was gone, but the scent of distressed vanilla and copper blood remained pulling at him like a magnetic force. Nathaniel turned slowly. Oliver was still huddled in the corner, clutching the heavy bronze paperweight to his chest. His crisp white shirt was torn, stained with crimson from the glass cuts on his arms. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Without the chemical suppressants masking his biology, Oliver's true Omega nature was entirely exposed. The pheromones were intoxicating, a sweet, dark berry and vanilla aroma that hit Nathaniel's senses like a narcotic. It was the scent he had unknowingly craved for 3 years, the scent his inner Alpha had already claimed without his conscious mind ever realizing it. "Oliver," Nathaniel said softly, the monstrous resonance fading from his voice. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the shards of glass biting through his expensive suit trousers. He held his hands up, palms open, a universal gesture of submission and peace. "It's me. It's over. You're safe." Oliver flinched, pressing himself harder against the wall. The residual terror from Dominic's attack, combined with the overwhelming presence of an enraged Prime Alpha, had thrown his suppressed nervous system into overdrive. "I'm sorry," Oliver gasped, tears finally spilling over his bruised cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reed. I'll pack my things. I'll resign immediately. Please don't call the police about the falsified medical records." Nathaniel felt his heart physically ache. He ignored the apology, slowly reaching forward to gently take the bronze paperweight from Oliver's trembling hands. He tossed it aside. "You're bleeding," Nathaniel murmured, his eyes scanning the nasty gash on Oliver's temple and the cuts mapping his forearms. "We need to get you to a doctor." "No." Oliver panicked, grabbing Nathaniel's wrist. The sudden skin-to-skin contact sent a jolt of electricity up both of their arms. They both gasped. For an Omega on the verge of a stress-induced heat and a highly protective Prime Alpha, the touch was like dropping a match into gasoline. "No hospitals. They'll run my blood work. They'll report my dynamic to the corporate registry. My career will be over. Everything I've worked for." Nathaniel looked down at the pale, slender fingers gripping his wrist. He could feel Oliver's frantic pulse. He could smell the bitter tang of the black market suppressants, fading, washed away by the overwhelming sweetness of the Omega's true scent. "Your career isn't over," Nathaniel said firmly, moving his hand to gently cup Oliver's uninjured cheek. He used his thumb to wipe away a tear. "I don't care about the registry. I don't care about the lies. I only care that you are hurt, and it happened in my territory." Without another word, Nathaniel slid his arms under Oliver's knees and shoulders, lifting the exhausted Omega effortlessly into his chest. Oliver let out a soft, surprised squeak, burying his face instinctively into the crook of Nathaniel's neck. The Alpha's scent, crisp cedarwood, and winter frost was no longer intimidating. It was a blanket, a fortress of absolute safety that calmed Oliver's racing heart. "My driver is waiting downstairs," Nathaniel rumbled, carrying Oliver out of the ruined office. "We are going to my penthouse. I have a private physician on retainer. He will treat your wounds, and he will keep his mouth shut." "Understood." Oliver was too exhausted to argue. The adrenaline crash was hitting him hard, and the comforting warmth of the Alpha carrying him pulled him down into a dark, dreamless sleep. Awakening came slowly for Oliver. The first thing he noticed was the scent. He wasn't in his cramped Astoria apartment, smelling of cheap bleach and city smog. He was surrounded by the rich, comforting aroma of cedarwood and rain. He blinked his eyes open, finding himself tangled in high thread count silk sheets in a bedroom the size of his entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the Manhattan skyline at dawn. Memory rushed back like a tidal wave. Dominic, the attack, the broken glass, Nathaniel's terrifying transformation, and the gentle arms carrying him away. Oliver sat up quickly, wincing as a dull ache radiated from his ribs. He looked down. His ruined clothes were gone. He was wearing an oversized black t-shirt that smelled aggressively of Nathaniel, and his forearms were professionally bandaged. A small butterfly stitch secured the cut on his temple. The bedroom door clicked open. Nathaniel stepped inside, carrying a silver tray with a steaming mug of tea and a plate of toast. The Alpha looked exhausted. He had discarded his suit jacket and tie, his dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair slightly disheveled. But when his amber eyes locked onto Oliver, a profound wave of relief washed over his features. "You're awake," Nathaniel said quietly, setting the tray on the nightstand. "Dr. Sterling left a few hours ago. He said you have 2 bruised ribs, minor lacerations, and a mild concussion. He also said your endocrine system is completely wrecked from years of heavy suppressant abuse." Oliver dropped his gaze to his lap, shame burning his cheeks. "Mr. Reed." "Nathaniel. I can explain." Nathaniel sat on the edge of the mattress, the bed dipping under his weight. "Explain why you poisoned yourself every day for 3 years just to work for me. Because being an Omega in this industry is a death sentence." Oliver snapped, defensive anger flaring momentarily. "I graduated top of my class at Wharton. I have a mind for analytics that outpaces half your senior executives. But if I checked that Omega box on an application, I would be relegated to event planning or administrative fluff. I wanted to be in the trenches. I wanted to work for the best." Nathaniel was silent for a long moment. He reached out his large, warm hand, covering Oliver's bandaged ones. "And you are the best, Oliver. Reed Capital wouldn't function without you. I wouldn't function without you. But you should have told me. If I told you, you would have fired me," Oliver whispered, staring at their joined hands. "Fired you?" Nathaniel let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Oliver, I have spent the last 3 years organizing my entire professional life just to ensure you were always in the room with me. I fired 2 vice presidents because they spoke disrespectfully to you. I bought the coffee shop across the street purely because they changed the supplier of your favorite espresso blend. Do you honestly think your secondary gender would have made me push you away?" Oliver's head snapped up, his eyes wide. You did what with the coffee shop?" Nathaniel leaned closer, his scent shifting from protective frost to something deeper, warmer, and undeniably possessive. "When Dominic Pierce touched you last night, I felt it. I was 3 miles away, and I felt it in my chest. My inner Alpha nearly tore me apart to get to you. You aren't just my assistant, Oliver. You never have been." Oliver's breath hitched. The proximity, the heavy, intoxicating scent of the prime Alpha, and the raw confession were short-circuiting his brain. His Omega instincts, free from the chemical prison for the first time in years, sang out in joyous recognition. "Mate." "Nathaniel." Oliver breathed, his voice trembling. "I know the timing is terrible." Nathaniel murmured, his face inches from Oliver's. He reached up his thumb, gently tracing the line of Oliver's jaw, careful of the bandages. "I know you are hurt. I know we have a company to run. But I cannot let you walk out of this penthouse unbonded. Not after coming so close to losing you. Not after seeing what happens when the world thinks you are unprotected. A corporate CEO bonded to his secretary," Oliver said, a nervous smile touching his lips. "The Bloomberg columns will have a field day." "Let them write whatever they want," Nathaniel declared, his gaze dropping to Oliver's lips. "I'll buy the publications and fire the editors. I am claiming you, Oliver, if you will let me." Oliver didn't need to analyze the data. He didn't need to run a risk assessment. For the first time in his life, the answer was perfectly clear. He leaned forward, closing the distance between them, pressing his lips against Nathaniel's. The kiss was a spark, hitting a powder keg. Nathaniel groaned, a deep, rumbling sound of absolute surrender, pulling Oliver flush against his chest. The Alpha's hands were impossibly gentle, mindful of the bruises, but his kiss was desperately hungry, claiming every inch of the Omega's mouth. Their scents collided and merged, crisp cedar and sweet vanilla, weaving together into an unbreakable, perfect harmony that filled the massive penthouse. Oliver tangled his fingers into Nathaniel's dark hair, his heart soaring as the phantom pain of his suppressants melted away, replaced by the profound, grounding warmth of an Alpha's bond. He was no longer a ghost in the corporate machine. He was seen, he was protected, and he was loved. Monday morning, the financial world would burn over the destruction of Pierce Global. But right now, tangled in the silk sheets high above the city, the only empire Nathaniel cared about was resting safely in his arms. Are you obsessed with Nathaniel's protective alpha energy and Oliver's badass survival instincts? If you loved this intense, pulse-pounding Omegaverse drama, smash that like button right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new audio story. Leave a comment down below telling us which scene made your heart race the fastest, and share this video with your fellow BL lovers. We drop new spicy romantic stories every week.